Right.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's hear from the sentiment that is coming also from the church and the laity, especially with the canon of the National Council of Churches as well, that is the Canon Karanja. And then we shall also explore much deeper of what actually he's saying.
Let's protect the NCCK from taking a very partisan political position. There are a few dangers on the way, because the handshake appears to completely stand in the way of Ruto. So if you love Ruto that much, reinterpret the handshake and explore keenly what are its total ramifications. If Raila is re-engineering himself through the handshake, and it is very likely, he is likely through it to cause major havoc on Ruto's design and scheme. But another Jogo has emerged in the Rift Valley called Gideon, who is very rich because he is part of the dynasties. And his father doesn't like Ruto at all. Even when Ruto tried to visit and say hello to mzee and pole kwa sababu ya maumivu ya magoti, he was not allowed to.
Well, sentiments coming from, of course, a clergy, really uncalled for. Maybe your panelists will weigh on this as well. It seems he has much information than most of you does, as far as also, you know, the affinity and affection that maybe the former president really has about, you know, Deputy President William Ruto as well. But really coming from the church and knowing that this is actually the voice of the church, maybe speaking on behalf of the National Council of Churches of Kenya. And I know most of also maybe some of the church leaders are not really also supporting his sentiment as well. Maybe he's speaking as a canon himself. What do you weigh in as far as the sentiments are coming from a church leader, especially in a very, you know, polarized political environment that we do have right now as far as 2022 is concerned, can be?
Interesting question. First thing I'd like to say is this. If I go back just so that I can build up on this issue about lifestyle audits, right? I think people need to understand that lifestyle audit is not about declaration of wealth. When we are public servants, like Pogisho is now, Senator Pogisho is now, I'm sure he has declared his wealth and it's been sealed in an envelope which is kept in the safe somewhere in the national, in Parliament, which is ridiculous.
Yes.
Because I've never heard of any envelope opened to check on then what Senator Pogisho has gained or lost in 2 years' time. So lifestyle audit is not about declaration of wealth. It's about declaration of how you have attained that wealth. And this is going to affect a lot of people, because I'm sure a lot of cabinet secretaries and other people in senior positions in government, if they are told to open that envelope and then they think that people don't know what they own. The president said candidly, he said, don't register that kind of name of your wife or the name of your husband, as the case may be, because we shall know, or your child. And then you shall be asked, how did you manage to get all this wealth? That's the question. And wealth is not bad. Wealth is very good. Everybody aspires to becoming wealthy. The question is, how did you get it? So these are the questions that are going to be asked. So I think this issue, the word forensic that was used by Dr. Ochuodo, working backwards, is important, and it must be done, and it must start to be done so that people have faith in this. Now, about Canon...
Yeah, before we go to Canon, maybe a question on that, because yes, we have all this wealth being declared, and then we have them enclosed in an envelope.
Yes, sealed.
So what we are sealed?
It's ridiculous.
The
idea was this, that you declare your wealth by a month a date in November of the second year.
Yes.
And then you say, I have this, I have the other one. Then you set all of them down, then it is witnessed, and then it is sealed, given to the Speaker's office or the Clerk's office, and then it is kept. And so with other public servants, it's kept. The idea was that after 2 years, it would be opened, and then would see what it is that you have gained or lost. If you have gained something there, then if it is inordinate with what you earn, then you might be asked to say how did you get it? And that is the purpose of lifestyle audit. And this lifestyle audit is within the EACC laws. So it's not like a new law should be formulated. Maybe fine-tuned, yes, but the law is there. We are not lacking in legal, in law on these issues. So it's there. So this thing about sealing an envelope and keeping it there is fine because that's what the law says. But when is it going to be opened? When was any of them opened so that we know what it is that Shemo Chuodho, assuming is a public servant, has gained? So these are important issues.
Right, but clarity for me. So this, because you say declaring wealth and of course lifestyle audit, this is, you know, there are two diametrically different issues that we're talking about.
They are very different. Because
where do we have the sealing of the envelope?
We see then
is it when you declare your wealth?
When you declare your wealth, you sit alone and you declare your wealth. You say, I own this house in Murang'a. I also own this house in Nairobi. I also own this motor vehicle. I own these shares in this company or the other. You do all that, then it is witnessed, then you seal it. It's taken to the Speaker's office, and when I was a member of Parliament, it's given a serial number, and that's the last you hear. They should return mine now because I'm not there. They don't need it. But the idea was, and it was a good idea. The idea was that you do that every 2 years, yeah? And if you lie, is an offense punishable by law. If you lie about, if you give false information, is punishable by law if you approved. But since none of those envelopes has been opened, at least I don't know any that was open to see what else that you have acquired thereafter, to me it makes no sense at all. But it will be very useful now if the cabinet secretaries have made that declaration, and then one cabinet secretary or the other is suspected of you know, acquiring wealth outside the law, so that because we know he or she has bought a house of 200 million shillings, and then he's made to open the envelope and then to explain, this house was not there 2 years ago among your wealth, right? He says yes. So let's know now how you acquired it. Show us where you got the mortgage, because it's a government mortgage. We know it's 20 million, maybe 40 million maximum. If it's a mortgage from the bank and you borrowed 20 million shillings, 100 million shillings, 200 million shillings, we want to see how you're financing it, because your salary is not financing it, cannot finance it. So show us those other businesses. If you did not disclose those other businesses in the sealed envelope, then you have committed an offense because you told lies, you gave false information, and what needs to happen to you if you're a cabinet secretary, you should not be made to step down. You should be made to resign, because you cannot have a cabinet secretary or a permanent secretary, a principal secretary, or a government officer who is not able to tell the truth in matters of public interest or in matters which have to be dealt with within the law. I don't know whether we are clear. So the envelope is the sealed envelope is very important, because it forms the basis upon which then you're interrogated on what you have acquired since you sealed that envelope.
Right.
But since you have not had any of them opened, that's the reason I say that to me it looks quite...
yeah, and you preempted my next question, maybe just clarity as well. Suppose, because this web is actually cast for the public servant, isn't it, for the civil servants. Suppose I choose to resign as a public official before this particular exercise begins, then what?
The sins you committed are not...
does the law also still extend?
The sins you committed are not forgiven by reason of that. You must live by what you have done, and the law will catch up with you, and you must explain. That's why you're seeing cabinet secretaries who are not in office, they are still being pursued. That's why you're seeing permanent secretaries who are not in office are still being pursued, because the issues, the thefts they committed, or the misappropriations they committed, were when they were public servants.
Okay, all right. Okay. Yes, sorry?
I hope you're not losing the...
Yeah, I'm not losing it. I'm not losing it. So I want to come back to him and comment now on Canon.
The church plays a very, very central role in society, in any society. And when the Catholic bishop, for instance, says he will not, his diocese, the churches in his diocese will not accept donations from politicians because they are not able to explain how they got that money. And I think that's what Bishop Kariuki of the Catholic Diocese of Embu had said not so long ago. If he says that, then he must follow through with that. But if that story narrative changes, then the flock that follows that bishop in that diocese lose faith, because then they do not know what to believe in anymore. So it's important that if Bishop Kariuki, for instance, of the Catholic Diocese, is a very respected person, if he made that statement about corruption and donations, he must follow through with that. Because people go to church on Sunday to be strengthened spiritually, so they can follow through the next weeks. So if Canon Peter Karanja now tells us about, is doing an analysis of the politics of Kenya in public,
yes,
I don't know how that assists the flock in the church. Because it appeared from the clip that you played, maybe it was out of context, because it was short. I don't know how he concluded his story. But you see, if his narrative seems to plant seeds of discord or misunderstanding among the people, like he's pitting, he talks about Gideon Moi being very wealthy because of this and the other one. I don't know whether he's supporting Gideon Moi or not, or whether he's fighting Gideon Moi. When he talks about Deputy President Ruto being fought because of this handshake, I don't know again how he is helping in the flock. He's doing a political analysis, it appears to me. He's not doing I don't know whether it's biblical, he's doing a political analysis. I don't know whether the correct forum for a canon, who is the Secretary General of the National Christian Council of Kenya, is the correct, NCCK is the correct thing to do, because he wears very many hats. First and foremost, he is clergy in the Anglican Church. So people will follow him by dint of his being a clergyman. Then he's the Secretary General of NCCK, so he's supposed sometimes to make policy decisions, to be the spokesman on policy decisions. If that is the position of the NCCK, then those of us that belong to the churches that form NCCK should be made to know that that's the policy, that's the line they are taking, so that we are able to interrogate it ourselves. But if he was talking himself as Canon Peter Karanja, again we need to know, because that's a different hat, because we cannot follow blindly. And we also can make political analysis. It is where you make your political analysis that matters a lot, because people view you according to the background or to how you're coming in to make that analysis. So I don't know whether it is in context, I don't know if it's complete, or you just showed us a short clip.
Yes.
But the interpretations that will come could be quite unhelpful to some people, and maybe to those who want to hear what he said. Again, they will interpret them as that they were really assisted by him in their thinking.
Let us come to Shemochodo, because many people will argue that how can we, or maybe a clergy should not be, meddling with politics. You should not be a political analyst, and politics and church. Yeah, you didn't say that, I know, but many people will argue, and they say that politics and church, they cannot really mesh. But we cannot really uncouple also politics from the church, because also from the Bible we know also of minor prophets like Amos, the prophet, that was also much into the social issues and the social injustices of the day as well. So also the church has a voice, but really swinging the pendulum on the extreme end as well. Is that really uncalled for? I know you also are Mzee or Kanisa. Yes. I don't know if you still are.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, a deacon.
A deacon
in the Adventist Church. I was before I went to politics, but I still subscribe to those ideals. Allow me to say we work with Canon Karanja on the DCG, the Dialogue Contact Group, this multi-sectoral forum that's trying to push for national conversation. I respect him a lot, and I am usually slow to criticize what he says, because often he makes what looks like controversial, but at some point they turn out to be true. I have in mind, he's one of also the first leaders who talked about national conversation, the president and the former prime minister having a conversation, dialogue, when things were pretty hot. He is also one of those people, I think he has called for amnesty in the fight against graft. And this is something that's very unpopular, I would believe, with Kenyans. A senior vice-chancellor designate, because he didn't allow me to mention, believes that that's going to be the only way to stem graft, that let's have amnesty, let's have this national conversation. People say this is what somebody took wrongly from government. They need to be forgiven, they need to refund, and so on and so forth. So there is, he premises, now talking of the vice-chancellor, he says that all other methods we have tried to fight graft have not worked. So maybe it's time that amnesty be considered as part of truth and justice, so that we get back, if we lost 1 billion shillings or whatever, or 100 million shillings, people can be told bring back 90 million. Because also he reasons that if you tell people to bring the entire 100 million, it may not be practical, in as much as it's a popular thing to say, let's get back the entire amount and even with interest. But in reality, it may not work. So in that regard, Canon Karanja has talked about amnesty, which is very unpopular. But I think people shouldn't dismiss it outright without analyzing it, whether it can work or not realistically. But coming to the point where he talks about the DP, the chair of KANU and so on, I think he's contradicting himself, because he says the church cannot be partisan. But clearly when he's talking,
yes,
he's appearing partisan. So that's what I would hold against him. But rather than, again, as Mheshimiwa Kembi has said, I would want to know in what context was he saying this? Was it out of gist? What did he really want to say? But obviously, the church participating in politics and leadership. We've had clergy. One of his predecessors, Reverend Mutava Musimi, ended up being a member of parliament, and that was very much in order. So the two can go hand in hand. After all, it's God who appoints leaders. So we read from the Holy Book.
Well, I think wherever the Canon Karanja is today, he must be regretting that he made those statements. I mean, he listens to himself now. I don't think he would be very happy listening to himself say those things. In that context, for example, it was a big contradiction, a very big contradiction. And I think I've never heard him be that reckless in his statements. I think he's always been a voice of reason. And now here he's giving a lesson to senior clergy, very senior people, giving a lesson and absolutely dividing the people. Because in those statements, that was very divisive, totally divisive. And so I would suspect that that was not meant for the media. I think that he was probably trying to speak off the cuff, and as usual, the microphones were somewhere, and cameras were still pointing. It wasn't meant really, because that to me, because if the way he spoke, for example, about Gideon Moi, you can almost tell he doesn't like Gideon Moi. Because first of all, he talks about him being wealthy. He didn't say about the other guy's wealth, and so on. So I think all those things that he spoke there, it was like giving a Sunday school lesson to very senior people, and he just needs to know that it wasn't in good faith, whatever he is. So I'm sure he's regretting. Canon is regretting what he said yesterday.
Yes,
and you saw bishops studiously taking notes in that clip.
Yes,
they're taking notes seriously, studiously, so that maybe they can reanalyze it, to their people when they go back to their dioceses, maybe so they can maybe so that they can propagate it.
Yes,
So I would like to know the context.
All right, but the context, we should also discuss, because I think also there has been we know about the sanctity of the altar.
There was something.
Right? We know, yes.
There was something that makes him contradict himself. He said, "Let's protect NCCK from politics, from partisanship," and then he goes on.
That's what I'm saying.
He goes on to be
going, swinging all the way the pendulum on the extreme ends.
Extremely.
And by the way,
I didn't want to say this, but I'm not sure Canon Karanja comes from that area. He could be the next governor designate for that area. So he wasn't probably talking to the Kenyan citizenry. He was addressing the community.
He was addressing.
But you're a leader wherever you speak. You speak for the country, Well, you're a leader. We take you. I think especially the office that you hold yourself.
Yeah.
You being the canon and the chair of the National Council of Churches of Kenya. We know that's the umbrella, and that will be the collective voice of the churches.
That's right, Debarl. I'm not even saying the canon is going to run for office, but in the event that he's thinking of that, he's probably trying to impress his constituents. And maybe he knows his constituents are pro the DP, who knows? But again, as others are saying, maybe this is something that came out without him meaning to say it. But it's for him to clarify.
But I think this was a very good, handy opportunity for us to discuss, especially where the church is and the politicization of the pulpit, where we see politicians are being given pulpit also to, trip off some things from their mouth that are really uncalled for even in church. That will be another place where maybe it will be a chopping block to try and obliterate someone politically. We've had that from here in Nairobi. The sanctity of the altar is actually being abused by some of the church and the laity that we do have also nowadays. So where is a place of a church in making sure that, that place that we know, we hear the word of God from, is a sacrilegious place, that there should be some decorum, there should be some order. Not every Tom, Dick, and Harry can be allowed just on the altar. And the person that we've elected to be the pastor, the bishop, then should also make sure that, yes, the purity of the altar also is maintained. I think we're losing a plot as far as the church is concerned, aren't we? I don't know. The people who are religious here say amen.
Amen. Amen. And that forum, unless I didn't see the rest of the people, that forum was made up of clergy.
Yes, the clergy, yes.
Okay, the clergy. And the very senior ones, by the way, very senior ones. And imagine, within that short time, we didn't hear anything from the Bible, okay? It was all about William Ruto, about Gideon Moi, about the handshake, in such a light as to make it look like the subject matter was being trivialized about the handshake. And I think we should come back to the point that the handshake is not something to be trivialized. The handshake is not about what Canon is talking about. The handshake is more than that. And then, of course, you know, the other thing which I thought was disdain was the way he spoke about the retired President Moi. I mean, how would you know that Moi hates Ruto?
True.
Because Moi never spoke.
Yeah, and that is such a strong verbiage.
It's actually, that's
using the word hate as well is really uncalled for, I think.
very uncalled for. Everything he said there was totally uncalled for.
You know, to answer your question about the church.
Yes, please.
If you allow me.
Please.
The church is very, very important. And I do not myself believe that, I don't believe that you can separate politics from the church. Because the church, as far as I know, is the conscience of the people, helps a lot in creating the conscience of the people. And if you are not there in the 90s, Debarl, but some of us were. And it is people like the late bishops Okulu, Bishop Muge, Alexander Kipsang Arap Muge, and people like Archbishop David Gitari,
yes.
People like late John Gatu of the PCA, people like Dr. Joya of the PCA also, and people like those, and there are many.
Yes.
It is those people in the 90s who brought common sense and you know, dialogue to this country. Some of them like Okulu, or even like Joya, current, who is with us.
Yes.
They suffered so much. I don't know whether you have the photograph of Joya being beaten up by goons outside Parliament. They're the people, they helped us so much gain sense in the 90s, leading to the second liberation, when the people like Kenneth Matiba, Charles Rubia, yes. And people like Martin Shikuku and others were so involved in the creation of the new constitution that we have now. So the church is so important, it cannot be taken for granted. Because what the clergy stand for, and what Bishops Okulu, the ones I mentioned, stood for, and stood in the pulpit at Austin's Cathedral, at St. Stephen Cathedral in Kisumu, and all those other places, and said what they had to say then, galvanized this nation. And it helped change this nation. So what the bishop or the clergy say from the pulpit makes a lot of difference. So if a clergyman stands at the pulpit, particularly a bishop of whatever church,
Canon, yeah.
and makes a canon, and makes a statement which can appear to be divisive, that they are taking a position, not talking about the general principle of what needs to be achieved, but they are taking a position, then you know that matters a lot. That matters a lot, and that's the question now. That now brings the question that you asked, whether the churches, the altar should be used in this form. The altar is very important. Yes, it can be used very positively, but yes, like it was by the bishops I've mentioned, the late Archbishop David Gitari, Bishop Okulu, Bishop Sara Kipsang Arap Muge, people like Moderator John Gatu, people like Timothy Joya, and many others like those. They've used the pulpit and they've told the people what they think should be done for nationhood. But there are those who can stand up now and make very divisive statements which are not helpful, which goes further to foment and to destroy what the handshake is trying to achieve. Because when President, and remember it was President Uhuru Kenyatta who took the handshake with Raila Odinga, and he is the president. And if you don't want to, if you look at him as the president, then you know that he is the chief executive officer of this country. So he leads us. We have given him the mandate to lead this country. He decided to have a handshake. Yes. We must respect that. Okay. On the other, and at the same time, he's the party leader for Jubilee. Yes. So when he made that statement, the handshake on behalf of the people of Kenya, yes, whom he leads, then as a chairman of the party leader for Jubilee, and then you find people in Jubilee who appear not to toe that line, then they must be brought to order. That is what party politics is all about. That is why you see in ODM, they are saying clearly, if you don't agree with our policy, with our manifesto, then you cannot purport to be a member of our party. But because you're elected by the people on that party, what we can do to whip you or to de-whip you, yes, is to remove you from the committees in which you sit, courtesy of being a member of our party. That's what party politics is about, and that is why parliamentary group meetings are very, very important.
Thank you. All right.